Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
And regarding those secrets that were given to the Pope from those kids in Fatima, Pope Benedict later said that the purpose of that vision, whatever it was not to show this idea of a irrevocably fixed future. Its meaning is exactly the opposite. It is meant to mobilize the forces of change in the right direction. And that's the sense I got, from everyone. That's the sense I get every day from everyone around me in Ukraine, but also the sense of what Father Mykola was saying, that, here you see the bad become worse and the good become better.
Joe. Little Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
When Joseph Lindsley said on Friday morning that he'd have an eclipse story for us on Monday, I figured now we're going to hear how Joe was once an astronaut and saw an eclipse from space. He is the world's most interesting man. Let's go to Ukraine. Hi, Joe. How's everything going today?
Hey, Bob. Great. Hello from Kharkiv. We're currently under ballistic missile threat, but it's calm here. And I really want to tell you about what happened over the weekend here. But briefly, I'll say I went, whenever that was, the last major eclipse across the United States, maybe 2017 or so, I went down to South Carolina, not far from where I grew up in Charlotte, Gaffney, South Carolina, with some friends and family. And it was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. Your sense of time and space really changes, because as the moon begins to cover the sun, all of a sudden the seasons change. The day changes to night, and your sense of timing is off because you never see the sunset at such a pace. And then the moment of total eclipse, I've never heard the people were laughing, they were crying, they were shouting. This bizarre moment, and there was a car driving down the highway, someone seemingly unaware with its headlights on because it was total darkness, and just this absolutely sort of bizarre scene, almost from like some kind of Coen Brothers movie, but really spiritual and mystical. And it was, and then you heard the owls, the night birds began to communicate, and then as the eclipse passed. All of a sudden, it was like a spring morning, and this was all at 3 o'clock on a hot day, but you went through multiple seasons through that, and it was an incredible thing. So I encourage, for those who are able to see it, it's amazing. And it's interesting. It does kind of coincide with the story I wanted to share with you, because this story also sort of messed with my sense of time and space. Yesterday, Sunday morning, I went to, this is here, I'm talking to you from Kharkiv, 30 miles or so from Russia. And this is, Orthodox country primarily, but there are a few Roman Catholic churches here. And I went on Sunday morning with our crew from Ukrainian Freedom News to the Church of the Holy Family. It's sort of on a ridge on the edge of the city, run by it's led by this Catholic priest, Father Mykola Belichev. And I've been following his post on Facebook. He's very thoughtful. He writes very thoughtful commentary about the war, including the details of battle, but also the spiritual nature of how to survive in this time. And so I wanted to visit him, and we traveled to this church. It was a beautiful, 60 degrees or so morning, blue sky. It would have been a pretty sleepless night, Saturday night. Russian Iranian drones had attacked the city. And so, but nevertheless, people show up for mass in the morning. And as you're standing in the churchyard, it's a beautiful garden surrounded by mainly Soviet-era buildings, but, well taken care of. But the church almost felt like something from California. It was a white stucco, built maybe 15 years ago. And from the church garden, you can see on the horizon Russia. This is at the edge. And so it was this sort of spiritual outpost, in the front line of good and evil. And after the mass, I was talking with Father Mykola and the two nuns who work there, Sister Alina and Sister Eve, as we were walking through the garden. And Sister Eve, she said that her room faces Russia, so she often sees the incoming missiles and drones as they're coming to Kharkiv city. And then Father Mykola said, if you want to become better, come to Ukraine. He says, if you want to find inner freedom, come to Ukraine. Right now, he said, this is the center of the world. And Ukraine is a lesson for the world. What happens when you don't stop evil? And then further, he said, in the war, he says, I've seen the bad become more bad, and the good have become more good. There is no other way. And as he was saying this, we walked to the parish house for breakfast with the staff and the parishioners. And as we sat down at the table, there was a woman next to me, one of the parishioners, and Father Mykola explained that in the first week of the full-scale invasion, the Russians had destroyed her home. So she and her husband and children moved into the parish hall. And soon others moved in as their homes were destroyed during those that awful spring of 2022. And in fact, that woman that was next to me, her father moved in and he died there in the parish hall, after 1 year, just of old age. So this became their new home. And I asked Father Mykola, I said, how would you describe that year of everyone living together? And he smiled and he said, great. It was truly great. And keep in mind, there were major missile attacks all the time, especially in that neighborhood back then in 2022 and even just a few days ago. And so it was pretty astounding to see people smiling, talking about this time. But then Father said that there's a flip side. He's pointed out, he said, as we all grow up and we are children, most people cry more during their childhoods than they ever will during the rest of their lives. He said that he himself, Father Mykola said, I've cried more these past 2 years than I did in my entire childhood. And as we're talking, the air raid alarms begin to sound. And I'm sitting at this table. It's Easter season for Roman Catholics. And there's the traditional Pascha cake. And there's a meat gelatin called holodets. It looks weird, but it's delicious. So we're eating this great traditional food. Sister Alina is pouring coffee. And I'm looking out these big windows at the blue sky toward the horizon, toward Russia. And as I hear the air alarm sounding, and knowing at any moment that we're right at the edge, something could hit. And that's when Father went back to this idea. He spoke about how this is the center of the world. Now is a great battle between good and evil. He said, we Ukrainians were naive for a while. We didn't really think this would happen. And he said, we don't want the rest of the world to suffer like we are. That's why we're asking for help. And I said to Father, what do you think? Because, Kharkiv, is a Russian-speaking city. Father Mykola grew up speaking Russian, knowing Russian culture. I said, what do you think drives Russia in this quest? And Father Mykola said, Russia is a nation controlled by demons, people who have sold their souls and freedom for a slavery that at first seems comfortable, to be taken care of by some kind of tyrant, but in the process, they've sold their souls to demons. And we discussed, because he's not the first person that has said this, the famous Russian writer Dostoevsky, his main book about Russian politics, his main novel about Russian politics in the 1800s was called Demons. So this has been a long sort of warning about Russia. And at that moment, Father Mykola started to tell us about 1917, the year of the Bolshevik Revolution. And a few months before that October Revolution in 1917, 3 shepherd kids in Portugal told their town that they had seen the Virgin Mary. And the word spread from their town all around the world and to the Vatican. And many people believed these 3 kids. And one of the main things, the Virgin Mary allegedly gave them 3 secrets, which later were revealed by subsequent popes. And one of these secrets was that Russia must be converted, that the world must pray for the conversion of Russia, or terrible things would be unleashed. That Russia, the sort of demons were controlling that country, and they were going to unleash hell on the world. And as Father is saying this, all of a sudden I hear that awful thud. And, you always try to say, oh, maybe that was someone slamming a door. And then you hear it again and again and again and again and again. And over the course of a few minutes, 4 Russian rockets and 2 aerial bombs attacked Kharkiv city, some of them quite close to us. And as this is happening, everyone is still there in the breakfast room or the dining room of the parish hall. Little girls sort of hopscotching on the floor, and we continue our conversation. And I asked Father, I said, what would happen if the Russians did occupy Kharkiv? And he said, almost everyone in this city would be killed because we've all resisted. We all very publicly, he said all the Catholic churches would be closed. Everything would be shut down. And then the last thing I want to share from this, he said, the sister, I think it was Sister Alina, said to him a few weeks ago, because it's been very difficult here in Kharkiv. Every night they say good night, see you tomorrow at Mass. And Sister Alina said, we need to change our evening greeting a bit and change it to these words: I'll see you at Mass tomorrow, or I'll see you at the kingdom of heaven. because both of these are real possibilities.
Incredible. Your words really take us to Ukraine and make us feel what you feel being there in the middle of war. And I'll tell you what else is incredible. At the beginning of our chat today, when I asked you how you were doing, and you said, great, calm now, even though there's a possibility of a ballistic missile attack. I mean, that, just think about that for a minute. That's incredible.
I mean, it is, and this is where you get you get such courage by being here. And we had some Americans and others there yesterday, and saying, this, even though we were right at the edge, like this, I felt like I was sort of floating in the universe. Like we might imagine during the eclipse, like it's kind of lost in time and space. Here we are, surrounded by such goodness, right there at the front line of this battle. And the fact that you can laugh and smile even during these attacks, knowing at any moment they could very well hit you. There's no complacency, and that is that's why I love to be in this city of Kharkiv. It shows that defiance is possible, and as everyone says, it's about inner freedom. And when you have inner freedom, you lose your fear of these outside threats. And so many volunteers I know who come here from around the world. To all of Ukraine, they say that they feel more peaceful inside here than they do anywhere else in the world.
Almost like the best at times, the worst at times. Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. We'll talk tomorrow. Thanks, Joseph.
Until tomorrow, Bob. Thank you. And one last note about that Church of the Holy Family. I asked Father Mykola, have you had a lot of American Catholics coming here to help? And Father Mykola said, no, there have been no Americans until we arrived yesterday. No Americans have come to his church to help. But he says there have been a few Europeans. He said there was a young Catholic guy from France who every couple months will deliver supplies. But Americans have not. And you think what a great opportunity to. I mean, this church is, you can see Russia. It is at the spiritual. It's at the front line in this spiritual and physical battle between good and evil. Come experience it at the very least, and you're welcome to come help.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Ебать.